Awesome. Well, I will go ahead and start it.
Pardon?
Howdy, everyone. My name is Alex Slaughter. I am one of the regional advisors for Texas A&M. I'm personally based in Denver, Colorado, but I also have Washington as kind of part of my territory. But I am not here to talk to you guys about Texas A&M. I am here to talk to you guys about finding the right fit and kind of figuring out how to narrow down your college search and really kind of figuring out what are the best schools for you. So in the United States, we do have about 5,300 colleges, give or take. That is a ton of options. So I was part of a junior night here in Colorado a few months ago, and the speaker was from the Princeton Review, and he did a really interesting kind of game, so to speak. So he had everyone in the audience, and you guys can do this too. So I want every single student and parent kind of in their mind to think of their top three schools. Like top three, if you take out cost, you take out admissions, you take out, all the other factors. If you were just to kind of pick for the student, the three colleges you want to go to, and for the parents, the three colleges that you would want your student to go to, just kind of think of those three colleges. And so just kind of, think in your head, okay, taking everything else out, what would you want? And then he proceeded to list about 25 schools. And if one of your schools, was, listed, you were kind of out of the running. So at the end, he asked, how many of you still have all three schools? And not a single person raised their hand in a group of about 500. So just listing only 25 schools, 25 of the over 5,000 schools in the nation, they are on top of everyone's mind. So it is something that, you have your Ivy Leagues, right? You have all your big schools, but it is important to kind of look and see some other options, right? There are a ton of schools out there. No matter which school you go to, you're going to get a great education. They're going to make sure that you're set up for success. So it is something
I
to
would
kind
say
of
that.
expand your horizons a
Just said
little.
no matter what school you go to, you'll get a great education.
But yeah, so it's something that just know there's tons of options out there. And so really kind of going in to, okay, how do we make this list though, right? How are you going to get kind of your top, 5, 7 schools that you should really be considering? So the first is, okay, thinking about, okay, your major, cost, location, type of school, what the campus life is, and then the requirements. I am going to kind of go into more detail about each one of these as we kind of go through this. So first up is your major. Obviously not every single person is going to have exactly what they want to major in, exactly what they want to be doing 10 years from now, but it is important to kind of start thinking of some ideas. Okay, do you want to be working a 9 to 5? Do you want to work in an office? Do you want to work, where every single day is different? Do you want to work with kids? Do you want to work with adults? Kind of starting to think through those questions. And really, if you know what you want to do, make sure that you're applying to schools that obviously have that major. If you want to do aerospace engineering, make sure you're picking a school that has aerospace engineering. So really just making sure that, they have pathways for your future career. If you want to end up working, doing animation at Disney, make sure see, okay, does this school have past graduates who have gone on to work for Disney or Pixar? Kind of seeing, okay, students in this major, where do they end up going? And, do they send students to what I want to do? And again, it is something though that I want to preface. Don't put so much weight in trying to find, that exact major. Like you can change your mind. For a lot of you guys, you're 17, 18. You do not have to have your entire life figured out. It is something that, get a good idea, kind of figure out your major, but just know you can't always change your mind. And it's also kind of important to find colleges that let you do that. And it's something that, like for me, I changed my major 3 times. The average person changes
Yes.
3 times. So it is something that definitely know that there is, you can still change, but as you're kind of looking through, really kind of, try and find, those schools that really have those amazing programs for specifically what you want to do. Now kind of going through cost. Know what your cost is, have a really good, have a frank conversation, between students and parents about like, okay, what is our budget? And then also to make sure that you're not just looking at the sticker price for a lot of schools. So between public and private, scholarships are going to range. And the main thing too is as you're looking at scholarship offers, to make sure you're not comparing apples to oranges. So some private schools, their tuition is like 70, 80,000 and they give a $50,000 scholarship. So you're going to see on the scholarship letter, $50,000 and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is huge. But when it's a $70,000 price tag, you're still paying about $20,000 out of pocket, compared to, say, maybe like a public school, which tuition is about $12,000, and they're giving you maybe a $5,000 scholarship. Your out of pocket is only about $7,000. But some people are like, well, they're giving me $50,000 versus $5,000. Obviously, this school is a better offer. So just know, like, make sure you're looking at, okay, what is the starting price and what is that scholarship coming out of? And research. Almost every single school is going to have a net price calculator on their website. This is where you can go through and put in, okay, this is our annual income, this is my GPA, my test scores, and it can give you a pretty good idea of what your kind of estimated range is going to be for tuition. And then also to kind of think, a lot of schools will broadcast their tuition. Also make sure you think of room and board too. Like if you're wanting to live on campus, even if you're not wanting to live off campus, if you're going out of state and you're in an apartment, a lot of schools, room and board is not included in that tuition price. So always kind of make sure you factor that in too. And then location. So, how far away from home do you want to be? Do you want to be 10 minutes down the road? Do you want to be 2 hours? Do you want to be 7 million states away? Really kind of thinking, okay, do I want something new? Do I want to experience something different? Do I want to, do I want to go where my friends are going? Do I want to, go somewhere where I don't know a single soul? Really kind of think, okay, what environment do I want? The other big thing too is, do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be in the suburbs? Or, do you want to be in the middle of a cornfield, right? Like what do you want around? What do you like to do for fun? If you love to hike, if you love the Pacific Northwest and you love the rain, maybe don't go to Arizona where it like never rains, right? Or if you really want snow, don't go to Hawaii. Like, really kind of think, okay, like what do I like about where I live? What don't I like? What kind of experience am I looking for? And two, like, do I want to be somewhere where it's a college town, right? Where the whole town is, very much for this school? Or do I want to be, in the middle of a city? Do I want to be in the middle of Denver or New York or Chicago where, I go between, a class and like a coffee shop and a restaurant? Like what kind of experience do you want? Do you want it where, is it, do you want to be where it's, accessible to an airport, you can travel around, you can, easily fly back for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or, do you want it where you're kind of a little bit more in the middle of nowhere? And there's no right or wrong answer. So just know, like, no matter what you're looking for, if you want to do New Orleans, so you can experience, all of the Cajun food and like having that cultural experience, or if you want to go to the East Coast, because, you grew up on the West Coast, you want to experience something different. Just know there's no right or wrong answer, but really kind of think, okay, what experience do I want? Do I want to be able to, just, go try a new restaurant every night? Or do I want to be able to have like my tried and true place that's like the, town watering hole? There's just a lot of options for you. The other thing too is kind of the type of school. Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond? Do you want to be a little fish in a big pond? Do you want to have it where, football is king and you have 100,000 people showing up at football games? Do you want it where there's no football team, right? Like what kind of experience are you wanting? Again, I talked about public versus private. The big difference with public versus private comes down to funding. Public, they are funded by the state. They also have a few more rules they kind of have to follow as far as scholarships and things like that. Private, that's where you can go, like if you want to do religious, if you want to have something that's, Catholic or non-denominational. Do you want that to be where you have to take a Bible class as part of your curriculum? Do you want it, where you have to take a liberal arts class as part of your curriculum? Do you want a school that's a tier 1 research institute? Do you want a school that does tons of study abroad? Do you want a school where everyone's living on campus? Or do you want the freedom freshman year to live wherever you want? Some schools have it where you have to live on campus your first year. Some schools have it you have to live on campus 2 years. Some schools have it you have to live on campus all 4 years. Some schools could care less. They're like, if you want to live here, great. If not, you live wherever you want. So that is also something to kind of look into and see, okay, like what kind of experience do I want? Do I want to be able to have the flexibility to live off, or do I want the structure of being like, oh no, all 4 years, I'm going to be living in the dorms on campus. And then also too, kind of campus life. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, right? Each school also is going to operate a little bit differently. Do you want it where you can take honors classes? Do you want a school that has a really rigorous honors program? How diverse is the campus? Is it important to you, that, do you want a historically Black college? Do you want a college that is, predominantly one race or the other? Like that's something that you have to kind of think, okay, what do I want to be surrounded by? With social life, what are students doing on Friday nights? What are they doing on the weekends? Are they hanging out on campus? Is it a ghost town on the weekends on campus? Also with athletics, do you want to play a sport? Do you want to do a sport? So definitely kind of looking into that and seeing, and just know with NCAA, there's a lot of rules with NCAA. So coaches can start talking to athletes June 15th after their sophomore year. D1 and D2 can give scholarships. D3 can't give scholarships. So that if that is something of interest to you, D1 and D2 are the bigger schools, right? D1 is going to be the biggest. They determine the conference based off of the student population size. So, if you want to play for a big school, just know you're going to have to be recruited. If you want to play a collegiate sport, but maybe aren't getting actively recruited, just know D2 and D3 are options. But just know with D3 you can't get a scholarship for playing that sport. It's just kind of something extra that you're doing. Do you not care about sports? Do you not know the difference between a basketball and a soccer ball? That's okay. Make sure you're picking a college that also fits that as well. Do you want to do intramurals? Is that a huge thing you want to do in college? Find one that has tons of options. Really with student organizations, right? How many student orgs do they have? A lot of schools have the list published. So go through and see, do they have, a club that interests me? Am I, do you want to do a Quidditch team, right? Does the school have Quidditch? Are you a huge Harry Potter fan? Is there a knitting club, a book club? Kind of look through and see, okay, what are the clubs like? Is there something of interest to me? Do you want to study abroad? Nowadays, most schools will have some sort of study abroad option, but maybe you want to do something really specific. You want to go to Antarctica and study the penguins and icebergs and global warming. Some schools have that as an option, right? But make sure, if that's your dream, make sure your school offers that. Also, too, are you interested in joining a fraternity or sorority? Does the school even offer that? Some schools don't offer it at all, but if that's important to you, make sure you're looking into that as well. And then the big thing too is your admissions requirements. Every single school is going to publish their average SAT, ACT. Look into it, kind of see, okay, where do I fall? For test scores right now, there's kind of 3 big buckets that schools are kind of falling into. So the first is test optional. So test optional is you can send it in, we'll look at it. If you don't send it in, it won't impact you. Number 2 is test required. Obviously, you have to send in a test score. And number 3 is test blind. So test blind is even if you send in your test score, they aren't going to look at it. So just know if a school is truly test blind, do not worry about paying the fee and sending the test score because they will not consider it for any admission standards. So really, most schools are falling into either test required or test optional. If it is optional, it truly is optional. So just know they're never going to say optional and you won't get in because you didn't send it in. It's always something that it's up to you, but make sure you're looking at that average test score because if you're falling below that average test score, it can hurt you if you do send it in and it's below that average. Also, too, look at application fees. Most schools, their application fee is anywhere between $50 to $90. If you're applying to 10 schools and it's about $75 an app fee, that's $750 that you are spending just applying to schools. It's not even going towards tuition, right? That is just applying to the schools. So make sure that you're really strategic in when you're applying, and where you're applying. Make sure you're not just applying anywhere. Make sure the schools that you're applying to really, truly, you could see yourself there. Don't apply to schools just because you are like, oh, I like the name. Make sure if you apply to a school, you truly see yourself there. It's going to save you a lot of emails, a lot of time. It's going to save us a lot of time of going through students who aren't really interested. So just make sure when you apply to a school that it's somewhere you really, truly see yourself. And then my big advice is to kind of create an Excel spreadsheet. How many of you guys have heard of Excel? Probably not many of you. But definitely kind of put all of the school names that are your top, your top 5, 10 schools and go through. When is their deadline? Do they require an essay? Do they require test scores? And kind of have it all in this spreadsheet so that way you know. The great thing about universities in the US is every single one of them does things differently. So it is something that just know it's great. They all do things differently. Every single school has a different deadline. They can be anywhere from November 1st to July 31st. So there is a huge range of when deadlines are, and it can kind of get confusing. And for universities, if you miss that deadline, 99% of the time, they're going to say no. They're going to be like, you missed the deadline. There's nothing we can do. So just make sure you're keeping track of those deadlines And for applications, I always say, you have your reach school, that school that you're like, I'm close. My GPA is a little low, maybe not. You have that reach school, and you kind of have the middle schools, and then you have your safety school, right? You have that school that you're like, I am getting in no matter what, I know for sure. So kind of have that range of schools. You can always shoot for a reach school, but just make sure you do have some backups, just because college admissions, there is kind of a joke in college admissions that it has never been easier and never harder to get into college. So just know, on the one hand, it's never been easier because there's so many options, right? There's, students are going all over the US. You have all 50 states. You have the world open to you. You have all 190 countries or whatever. How many countries are there now? 209. They keep changing, right? There's a ton of countries available. So you can go anywhere. But it's also never been harder because, again, a lot of the students are focusing on the same schools, right? Everyone's looking at the same 25 schools. So it's kind of like everyone's funneled in on these same schools. So for those 25, 30 schools, it's hard to get into. UCLA has the most applications per any other university. Does anyone have a guess of how many apps UCLA gets every year? Just an estimate. Who have any brave souls who want to guess? We have no brave souls. Anyone? Any guesses?
6,000.
I got 6,000, got 80,000. Yeah, so the answer is 110,000 on average is what some of the California schools are getting. So you think they are definitely not fitting 100,000 students on any campus just as a freshman class.
100,000.
100,000 apps. Yep. So there's definitely a lot of people kind of focusing on the same schools. So just know that there's definitely, look at some of the other smaller schools too. Like they're great. So just know you don't have to focus on the big ones. And really, as you're building your list, obviously with out of state, it's hard, but try to visit as many schools as you can. Go visit campus, experience it. And when you're walking around campus, kind of think to yourself, do I see myself here? Is this someplace that, when you're in the library, when you're on campus seeing the other students, do you feel a sense of belonging? Your gut won't steer you wrong. And as you start getting emails, as you start getting mail, physical mail from schools, kind of start seeing like which school do you get excited about hearing from? Like that's really going to kind of tell you a little bit more of like, okay, like where your heart is leaning. A lot of campuses offer virtual tours now just because of COVID. There's a lot of different ways to kind of explore campuses online. So you can do it from the comfort of your own home, but really try to physically go in person to as many schools as you can. It really is going to help. And really for us, the big questions we get, right? When do we start? So, for juniors, the applications are going to open August 1st of this coming year. That is, pretty exciting. I know it's kind of crazy. Some of you are like, I'm not ready for it. But August 1st is always kind of the universal application opening day. I always say, aim for like 5 to 7, 6 to 8 schools that you should apply to, just because the more you apply to, the harder you're just making your decision. The more scholarship money that you're taking away from other students, because if you're applying to 20 schools and each school is giving you a scholarship, a lot of schools, they kind of only have a certain scholarship fund. So unless you're really serious about that school, try not to take up too many of those spots. And then really kind of like a lot of students, it's like, okay, like I've applied, like, what do I do now? Double check, make sure, is there a separate honors application? Is there a separate scholarship application? Some majors, like if you want to do some majors that are a little more artsy, they require portfolios and things like that. So there's definitely kind of look into that and kind of see. And then really too, what else should you be doing? Check your email, create a appropriate email. I beg of you. We do see some very interesting student emails. So create, an email specifically for colleges and check it. I know you're going to get a lot of emails from every single school, but those emails are important. A lot of them do have information. Unfortunately, I deal with a lot of students for A&M. Our deadline was December 1st. This past month, I've been dealing with a lot of students who didn't check their email and didn't realize that their app was incomplete, and now it is too late. So it is something that you really could be missing out on actual information that schools are trying to tell you about. So make sure you check it. Take the SAT or ACT, even if some of the schools that you're applying to might be test optional, like just see, right? Take it, see what you do. Start a resume. start thinking, okay, what have I done in high school? What clubs have I been a part of? What awards have I gotten? You know, what volunteer work have I done? Kind of start jotting those things down now, so then when it comes time to apply, you can quickly put them in. And I think the main thing too is to know, like, we are here to help. Every single college has an admissions representative. You know, some of us, you know, have, you know, are based in different colleges. Some of us are, you know, more local to different states. There is always someone for you to reach out to, right? There's an admissions office for every single school in America. There is a contact number to call. If you have questions, that is what we are here for. So just know we are here to help. I promise we are not scary. We are very open to kind of help you through the process. So just know that we are here to help and ask questions, right? Especially when you're on those campus tours, ask questions. There is no dumb question. There are a few actually, that I did get when I was a tour guide, but I know that none of you guys would ask them. So definitely just know there's tons of things you can be asking as you're kind of looking through. And yeah, just know everyone's here, right? Everyone's here to support you. You have your teachers, you have us, you know, on the admission side, you have your high school counselors, family, friends, you know, a lot of you, like your cohorts, your friends are going through the same thing that you are. So just know, talk to people, get advice, but also to ultimately know this is your decision, right? This is where you're going to be spending the next, 4 years of your life. So just make sure you're making the right decision for you too. So I'm going to kind of open it up for any questions that anyone has. Feel free to either kind of put them in the chat, or, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But I'm going to kind of see if there was any questions that we have. What do you think about trade school? Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It totally depends on what your end goal is. If you want to, do if you want to do hair, right? If you want to be a hairstylist, if you want to do like plumbing, if you want to do electrician, find a program that is going to get you that job though. So just make sure whatever you're going to trade school for, make sure you know that that is kind of your end all be all, right? It is something that it's oversaid sometimes, but college really isn't for everyone, right? There are certain people who know for sure, like, I want to be a hairstylist and this is what I want to do. It is something that, like, obviously you don't have to go to college and get a 4-year degree to do that. So just know that there is options for everybody. And just know what's, right for you might not be right for the person next to you. So just make sure that you're doing what's right. So
I'm not videotaped or the.
All right, let's see. Next question was, any recommendations for exploring international options? I mean, I think double check, right? Some international schools don't accept international students or students from the US. Make sure that they accept students from the US. Make sure you think through, okay, how do I feel being in a different country? How do I feel being away from family? What are the visa requirements? What, what just kind of think through, like, okay, is this exactly what I want to do? Is this something that is this, where I want to end up? What would you hope to gain from being in that country? It is something that, going to school internationally is great, right? But just know that it's going to be a culture shock, right? You're going to be far from home. The prices to come back for Thanksgiving, Christmas are going to be really high. So just kind of think through that as well. And kind of think too, like, do I want to go for all 4 years or do I want to just spend a semester there? There's definitely options. So just kind of think through what it would all entail. And, if something were to go wrong, like, heaven forbid, knock on wood, like, what would happen, right? Like, just make sure that you're aware that you're kind of out there on your own and it's harder to get to you. And then volunteering. How and why is volunteering helpful in college admissions? So with volunteering, it just shows that you're putting other people first. So for volunteering, it's something that we look at to see, are you willing to set aside your time and not being paid? Part-time jobs also look really good just because it's showing responsibility. But with volunteering, it's something that you are truly doing because you're passionate about it. And that's what admissions likes to see, is what gets you up in the morning, what drives you, what are you passionate about? And volunteering is a great way to kind of show that. Unfortunately, there is not an easy peasy database that has all the schools listed that has test optional or test required. Basically, you'll just need to go school by school that you're looking at. So say you're looking at like Clemson or Alabama or LSU, you'll just need to go to that admission website and see, okay, what are their admissions requirements? And they'll show it. Here, I'll do an example. Someone name a school, any school in the US. What's a school that someone's interested in? Any school, just yell it out.
Rhode Island School of Design.
I love it. All right. So we're going to go to Rhode Island. We're going to go to admissions. And you guys are first year. So let's see. We're going to click apply. These are the deadlines. Let's see. So we have test and test optional. So we offer applicants the option to apply without submitting test results. So the Rhode Island School of Design is test optional. So basically that you would just need to go school by school and it'll kind of say in black and white, test optional or test required. So that's kind of that option for you there. In terms of applying to colleges, do you know how colleges view AP? Okay. So as any college prep is going to look great. AP, IB, dual enrollment, most colleges treat them pretty equally just because it's showing that you're taking a college prep kind of college rigor class. I will say most colleges don't take AP like scores into consideration. They just take that you took the AP class into consideration. Whenever you decide that you are going there, they will look at those scores for transfer credit, but generally kind of rule of thumb, most schools are just seeing if you have AP, pre-AP, IB. That's what they're looking for. They're not going to actually look at your scores from the AP test. And it's something that we do. I mean, it's a pretty big factor for a lot of the more competitive schools, because if you're just taking kind of regular classes, a lot of schools kind of see that as you didn't challenge yourself. A lot of schools, if you have a 3.8 and you took, AP, IB, you're taking AP Calc, you took AP Physics, that actually looks better than just a 4.0 taking regular classes. And it's something that, unfortunately, it's not quite as straightforward as like test optional, but you can kind of get a pretty good feel for different schools of seeing kind of what they're looking for if you kind of read through their requirements. And some of them will kind of say like what their average student kind of is like. I'm trying to see if the Rhode Island School of Design has something like that. But you'll kind of get an idea of kind of what they look for. But yeah, see like their deadline for early decision. Ooh, real quick, last minute. Early decision, early action, regular decision. It's kind of crazy. So basically for early decision, like here, if you apply to an early decision, you are only allowed to apply once, because if you are accepted, you are going to that school. You basically are signing on the dotted line. I'm applying early decision. I am going there. With early action, it's not binding. You're just getting a decision faster. So early decision, you are applying to one school. If you get in, that is where you are going. Early action is saying, hey, I'm really interested. It's not binding, but I'm going to get my decision a little bit quicker. And then regular decision is they're just kind of rolling, right? Like you're going to get your decision a little bit later. And that will kind of be that. So I believe we got 1 minute until you guys are heading to the next session before this session is over. Kind of do a final call. We got like 30 seconds if there is any. You have like 5 minutes to transfer between Zooms. But I'm going to kind of see if there's any other questions that we have in our last remaining minute.
I have a question. So I've heard that colleges now are filling most of their spaces with early decision or, whatever the other one's called.
Early action, yeah.
Early action. Is that, do you think that's true?
I would say the more competitive schools, yes. Like a lot of the schools, like A&M, for example, I know most of our students who did get in had applied before October. A lot of schools that are a little bit have, lower acceptance rates are more competitive. If you don't get your app in by October, most like it definitely is, they take it by app date, right? So they're kind of seeing who's most interested. I always tell students, apply August, September, like just get it in. Even if you're not coded as even if a school doesn't have early action, it's giving you your best shot, because a lot of schools, they are reaching a capacity issue. A lot of schools are like, we have X amount of spots. And once we fill those spots, even if a 4.0 valedictorian 1600 SET comes along and we have no more spots, they're going to get denied just because there's no more spots. And so there is more and more schools in the US that are reaching kind of that capacity issue. But then you also have other schools who are, just, for lack of better word, desperate for students. So they're like, anyone can come. So I think it just depends on the caliber of schools that your student's applying to. But if they are looking at the Ivy Leagues, the UC systems, the UTs, the A&M, the Rice, you know, like the high kind of those competitive, you know, Vanderbilt, Notre Dame, right? Those kind of schools, yes, you're going to want to make sure you apply early because they do fill up. But yeah, any other questions that anyone else has? It was very nice to meet all of you virtually, all of your lovely black, you know, black boxes. But I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of the evening. I hope you guys get to learn a lot and try not to stress too much. I know that doesn't help at all. But definitely just know that there is a right school for you and you will find it. So, but hope you guys have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Of course.